Our Heavenly Father, we are so thrilled at your health message. We are so thrilled at your leading. We are truly honored as a people, Lord, to know you. We are honored, Lord, that you would entrust us with such a message of love and of forgiveness, of salvation. And Lord, you've detailed out for humanity how to be saved. And Lord, we so desire to live in eternity with you. We desire you more than anything, Lord. You are our first love. And Lord, I just pray that you would anoint my lips, that I just simply may be the talking donkey, Lord, that I just may be the middleman because I don't want to be seen. There's nothing that I can say of any value aside from what I say from the Bible and spirit of prophecy. I thank you, Lord, for this opportunity to be able to share with Eva in the group and on this platform. And I pray that you would bless it immensely. I pray that those who hear this message, Lord, may be pricked in their conscience and pricked in their heart and moved to action. I thank you, Lord, for this most beautiful message and uplifting message of health and salvation through the health message. And as I share a little bit of my own testimony, Lord, I pray that you would bless it and that I would uplift you and nothing of myself. In Jesus' name I pray. Amen.
Amen.
All right. So this topic is called God's self-evident health message. You know, the first thing that I ask is what message in the Bible has been one of the greatest blessings to you? And I think that different people have different walks and we have different experiences. So we have different uh, things that really speak out to us and jump out from the Bible at us. And for me, it was the health message. I came out of atheism, and I know that Eva has shared that with you all before. I've been on here with you guys, and so you can look back at those. But to me, as a brand new Christian, I didn't even know what Seventh-day Adventists were, never even heard of the name yet, and yet God had called me very early on to the health message, and it became something that God has just placed so strongly in my heart. Now, I was already a registered nurse. I had been working in the burn unit. I had been doing, and then as I came to know the Lord, I started doing a lot of medical missionary work in different parts of the world. I've been to well over 35 countries. I think I've lost track. I'm sure it's more than 35, maybe 37 now, 38. And many of them as a medical missionary. And I've learned so much just by being in different parts of the world, because as I was in other parts of the world and I'd only been exposed to Western medicine, well, I didn't know what the rest of the world was doing. I just assumed that was kind of what was happening with everybody. But I would notice that people would have different diseases and different conditions at different parts of the world of wherever I was. And I started noticing the food differences. I started noticing lifestyle differences. And but my very first conviction about the health message was a brand new Christian. I don't even think I was even 6 months in the Lord. And my sister and I were at Burger King, and she had just been born again as well. And here we are at Burger King. We have our fries, our shake, and our burger. And so we're sitting down to pray. And I said, well, let's pray. And so we're praying. And as I'm praying for God to bless this food to the nourishment of our body. And the thought that came into my mind was quite startling. And the thought that came into my mind was, is this food? Can I bless this food? I had no idea where those thoughts came from. And I finished my prayer, and I looked up at my sister and I said, I just had this very strange thought that this isn't food and that God can't bless this food. Did you have that same thought? And she said, no, thank you for the prayer. And she started eating. Well, I didn't start eating so readily. Uh, Instead, I molded over and I ate kind of slow, and I just couldn't shake that thought. Nevertheless, I did get through the meal, but that was my very first conviction as is this food? And that really was what started me on my journey. Now, I on my spiritual journey of health. Now, I had already kind of been on a health journey in a minimum kind of way as an atheist, but this was my very first conviction as a Christian. And then, of course, as God, for those of you who have seen my testimony, that as soon as I was born again, I mean, at that moment of rebirth, which I didn't understand, um, uh, God had put into my mind, because I was an atheist, He put into my mind as I prayed over my dying husband's bedside, asking God to help. Um, and the first thing that he put into my mind, it was instant knowledge, and that was the Bible is true, and also that Jesus came to walk as a man, and he was God, and he was my savior. I had no idea where those thoughts came from. They weren't even thoughts; they were absolute true beliefs in my mind, and I had no idea where they came from. And I still believed I was an atheist. For the next 9 months or so, it was very interesting living in my head because I didn't really understand the what was happening in me, because God gave me the choice to either continue growing these new thoughts that He put into me, or growing my atheistic thinking. And so for 9 months, I had both of these thoughts juggling in my head, and it was very interesting living in my head at that time. And as I was reading the Bible as an atheist, it just became so self-evident to me that the Bible was real. Well, of course it's real. But yet I still had these atheistic thoughts. So to me, when I look at self-evident, these were things that were just popped into my mind. And so not only the Bible, but the health message. It just became completely self-evident to me. And I embraced both. I didn't understand both. I had to grow in grace in both the Bible message and the health message. But to me, the Bible and the health message was completely self-evident. I needed no proof that it was there, because the proof was so clear, that it was obvious that the Bible was true. It was clear that the health message was real. It was very self-explanatory. The evidence is obvious. I didn't need proof in order for it to be accepted. And then we can look at the synonyms are clear, indisputable, undeniable, unquestionable, incontestable, self-explanatory, plain, transparent, acceptance, given, hands down. And to me, this was the health message. So as God taught me the health message one step by one step, then I was able to embrace it. I didn't embrace everything all at once because it just would have been too much for me. And so I continued to learn and grow one step at a time. Then the complete antonyms were problematic, questionable, arguable, debatable, dubious, doubtable, contestable, disputable. These words just did not even come into my vocabulary as I was learning about the Bible and the health message. And now, even after I became aware of being born again, which was about 9 months later, and then God really started teaching me about the health message. I just never even considered that it was not true. And so as God taught me, I just changed one thing by one thing by one thing. There were times when I was changing so much that there were times that I'd have to hold my hand out and say, "Whoa, God, it's just too much coming at me too fast, and I'm making too many changes, and I hardly can't even keep up with myself." And so I would hold off kind of a couple of weeks until I was able to kind of catch up to myself again, and kind of make this doable for me. And I'm not able to advance this. Oh, there we go. So one thing that I started to understand was natural law. Natural law is something that cannot be ordained by law. You can by legislation, you can legislate a stop sign or legislate laws about property ownership. But natural law are things that are completely inherent in human nature and essential to binding upon human society, such as the rule of gravity. That it's just there. We can't legislate gravity. It's a body of principles that are considered to be inherent in nature and have universal application in determining whether human conduct is right or wrong, often contrasted with positive law. Cannot be legislated, and we can learn from that. And so natural law is what I found out is how God regulates the body of health. So there are health principles in order for us to abide by. So I found out that God does not call us to be a vegetarian or a vegan or even a whole food plant-based. God is calling his people to be health reformers, which includes all of these plus more. We have a lot of really great voices out there, secular voices that teach a whole food plant-based diet, but they don't teach the entire message. And what I mean by that is many of the whole foods plant-based people, they still teach that pepper is okay, vinegar is okay. They have as wonderful as they teach. But they still have things like baking powder, baking soda, the spices. These things are considered to be part of the health reform movement rather than just a whole food plant-based. And there is a difference. It's not the whole message. So I'd like to ask, does the Bible teach that it is a salvational message? Is diet a salvational message? And I know that a lot of us, we kind of get our hackles up, and most of us are going to immediately say no without even thinking it through. And we're going to then disregard people who even ask this kind of question. I want to make it equal or similar to the Sabbath. The Sabbath message we know is a salvational message. But if there is somebody today that truly loves the Lord and they are completely connected to the Lord, and it's very clear they are born again, and their very breath just oozes God, and he is their first love, and they've never heard the Sabbath message, and they die tomorrow. Will they die saved? Absolutely, they will die saved. The health message is the same principle. So we are responsible for the message, for the light that we've been given. When I was a Sunday keeper, my very breath oozed the Lord. I gave him my very life, and there was nothing that I didn't give him. And so when it came to the Sabbath, I didn't know anything about the Sabbath. I knew I was saved. But when light came to me and I started to learn about the Sabbath, and then I finally did one Bible study after another, looking at the Sabbath from all different sides, like a spoke in a wheel, and I was finally convicted that the Sabbath was real, then that becomes a salvational issue, is when I'm convicted and I understand it, and I didn't push the message away at that moment. I pushed it away earlier because I didn't know what I was pushing away. But at that crossroad, when I was convicted about the Sabbath, at that crossroad, it became a salvational issue. And so the same with the health message, that there are going to be many lovely people that are going to pass away and they are going to be raised in the first resurrection who know nothing about the Sabbath and who know nothing about the health message. But once we understand the health message, we have a responsibility now to adhere to it. And but I'm going to give some examples here, and then you can decide for yourself whether it's a salvational message or not. But I think it's necessary that we have a good solid foundation for understanding this as we move forward, because it's not, well, what about, people who died today? It's a really important principle in order to understand before we move on. And then, of course, we know that the health message is going to be a foundational message in the end times for the 144,000, and it will become a salvational issue for all people at some point. So Sabbath isn't a salvational issue at the moment for those who don't know it, and the diet is not a salvational issue for those who don't know it. That's what the book of James is all about. It's about faith and works working together. So in 1 Corinthians, it says in 6:19-20, what? Know ye not that your body is the temple of the Holy Ghost, which is in you, which ye have of God, and ye are not your own? For ye have been bought with a price. Therefore glorify God in your body and in your spirit, which are God's. We have to define this appropriately, and we have to let the Bible define itself. So the question then is, well, if we've been bought with a price and we're to glorify God in our body, how do we do that? And if we are the temple of God, then we need to know how to define this. And if we are the temple, which is going to be my next talk next month, is going to be on the body temple. And then if any man defiles the temple of God, him shall God destroy, for the temple of God is holy, which temple ye are. If God will destroy those who destroy the temple, then we need to understand his requirements for caring for the temple. And so we can't just, we have to dig, we have to search, we have to pray and ask God how he defines us taking care of the holy temple, not me, because he says that if we defile the temple, that he will destroy us. So it's necessary for us to define it in God's terms and not ours. In Genesis 2:16-17, and the Lord commanded the man, saying, of every tree of the garden thou may freely eat, but of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil thou shalt not eat of it, for in the day that thou eat thereof thou shalt surely die. Now let's look at this. First of all, there's the word command. If you look that word command up, it actually means the same thing it's the same word as the 10 Commandments. So this word becomes a commandment to us, and not just a good saying, and not just a good idea. And so think about these, as I go through these examples in the Bible, think about the eternal blessings that are waiting for these people if they just simply pass the test. God had a very simple test waiting for Adam and Eve, and that was eternal life. And all they had to do was just not eat. And it was a test of temperance. Then the tree of good and evil would have been removed. And Satan then would have been banished forever. Then sin would have never even reared up again. And they just had to pass that appetite test, and they would have lived a wonderful life under the government of God for eternity. And we think about what a wonderful God to even tell them, because we know through the pen of inspiration that they were given multiple opportunities to commune with the angels and God himself, and they were warned many times about the serpent. And so they completely disregarded God's counsel to them. And so, but we know that they failed this simple test, and they chose to live contrary to God's command, and a curse was pronounced then on mankind and on earth. They were now destined to die, but immediately, without delay, Jesus came and stepped in between death and life. Praise the Lord for that. Let's look at the flood. The earth was destroyed because of intemperance in eating and drinking. For as in the days that were before the flood, they were eating and drinking, marrying and giving in marriage until the day that Noah entered into the ark, and knew not until the flood came. Again, God had a huge blessing waiting for everybody. God gave Noah 120 years to build this ark, that whoever should want to come and listen to God, that he, by every nail that was put in that ark, was another a testament of God's voice and a warning of reproof to the people. But we know that most people didn't come, but God had a huge blessing waiting for anybody who would come. God had very specific measurements and requirements for building the ark, and it had to be built for under these strict rules, because it would have never made it through the flood otherwise. But we know that only Noah and his family entered, only 8 were saved, but yet the entire world over those 120 years could have been saved. But they denied listening to every nail that went into that ark. We look at the huge blessing that was waiting for the Hebrews and Israel if they just would have tamed their taste buds and passed the test of diet again. They would have the promise of healing. They would have the promised land and would be known by the world as the follower of God. They had this huge blessing that they would have only probably been weeks in the desert. Instead, they ended up spending 40 years. And what a promise that he gave them. But instead, they grumbled. They didn't like what God had offered them. They soon after they left, it was, my guess is it may have been a couple of weeks after their provisions were running out, because they plundered the Hebrews, the Egyptians, before they left, in payment for their years of slavery without pay. And so they probably came with weeks worth of food and supplies, but soon their supplies were running out. And so whatever time frame that was, 2 weeks, 4 weeks, 6 weeks, I don't know, whatever it was, they started grumbling. And they had to, they refused to tame their taste buds. And so they started grumbling for meat. So they gave the meat, and God winced after God gave the quail the first time. Then the next morning, God gave them manna, and then they grumbled again later after that. And they refused to tame their taste buds. And after that second time, God did not wince, and a lot of people were killed, then died in a plague. But God had a huge blessing waiting for them, if they would have only tamed their taste buds. And that they shall eat the flesh, and that night roast with fire and unleavened bread, and with bitter herbs they shall eat it. So God had also a huge blessing for the Hebrews. I guess I got ahead of myself on that slide a little bit, but they were given very strict instructions in how to prepare the bread and to put the blood on the doorpost, and in order to save their firstborn, and how they were to leave Egypt without leaven, and to place blood on their doorpost. And all they had to do was just pass a simple test. Let's continue on with this little test. The Day of Atonement was about temperance. It was a very simple diet test. Again, all they had to do was fast for 1 day a year. God had a huge blessing waiting for those who passed the test, because we know that living in the Day of Atonement, which was a day of fasting, those who followed God spent the day in repentance and in affliction of soul, and those who didn't were removed from the congregation. And this was about temperance again. So in Daniel, again, we see more tests of diet coming. God had a huge blessing waiting for Daniel and his three friends. And all they have to do is pass the diet test. Again, it's interesting that Daniel is one of the two end time books, a prophetic book for God's end time people, and yet it starts out with a diet test. And so the king appointed them a daily provisions of the king's meat and of the wine which he drank, so nourished them 3 years, that at the end thereof they might stand before the king. And then we know the story that for 10 days they were then allowed to eat not of the king's dainties, but of homemade food, real food. It consisted of fruits and vegetables, whole grains, beans, legumes, nuts, seeds, and it would not be portions of the king's meat. Now, the king's dainties had lots of sugar and fat and meat and alcohol and processed foods, and because the common people were not even allowed to have food back then, processed foods back then, because it costs so much. And so then but we know that at the end of that 10 days, then that they were blessed and they were allowed to continue eating the diet of God, and they were blessed 10 times more than anybody else. Then we see when it goes on now under 2,300 days, this is something that we all are very familiar with as Adventists, Daniel 8:13-15, then the sanctuary shall be cleansed. And when that day passed, I, even Daniel, had seen the vision and sought for the meaning. Now we know that we live in the antitypical Day of Atonement now since 1844, and that's a whole Bible study on itself. That's not just a date that has been pulled out of thin air. There's actually a meaning to that. And so living in the antitypical Day of Atonement, we know that we can't fast permanently, or we won't last long, because we have to have food. But our permanent fast is a fast that consists of only God's food that has come from the hand of God. And then we look at Nebuchadnezzar, which is also in the prophetic book of Daniel. And at that end of the days, I, Nebuchadnezzar, lifted up mine eyes up to heaven, and mine understanding returned unto me, and I blessed the Most High, and I praised and honored him that lived forever, whose dominion is an everlasting dominion, and his kingdom is from generation to generation. Now, we all know the story of Nebuchadnezzar too, that he had a lot of pride. He was very egotistical, and Daniel warned him through a dream that he had, and that if he was going to continue denying God his right, then he would be sent to live like the oxen. So we need to look at Daniel's diet, Nebuchadnezzar's diet. This is the ultimate detox diet now, Nebuchadnezzar's diet. For 7 years, he was out there eating greens and sprouts and things that the oxen eat, which are still also some fruit and of course vegetables. So, but he was living outside. The ultimate detox diet is what I call it. He was living under the sun. He had plenty of fresh air and trust in God, and as he was learning, and he had a huge blessing waiting for Daniel and his friends to pass the diet test. We know they passed. He had a huge blessing waiting for Nebuchadnezzar if he just passed the diet test. And we know eventually he did. And he needed 7 years of detoxifying in order to get all the king's dainties out of his bloodstream, because it takes about 7 years for all of our cells to actually regenerate. Every single cell in our body is regenerated in about 7 years. We also see inside the Ark of the Covenant that we have the health message right here, reminding us about the manna, because in the Ark of the Covenant we have the manna, we have the budding rod, and then of course we also have the 10 commandments that are on the tables of stone. Now, the tables of stone represent the moral law, and the health message is also part of the moral law. And I'm going to share more about that later in another talk and get more into that. And then, of course, Aaron's rod is also it. There was no meat, there was no lamb, there was nothing inside of there that was of an animal product. It was a budding rod that budded almonds, a plant-based. The rod, interestingly enough, is a representative of the Holy Spirit, because it was the rod that convicted the people when they grumbled against Aaron, that why, and Moses, of when they were questioning, well, why should God lead you and why can't God lead us too? And so they grumbled, and then God said, the head of every household, have them bring a rod, and he will bud the household of the rod of who he wants to lead. And so we have the Holy Spirit, we see Jesus and God the Father all in the Ark of the Covenant being representative, because we know that Jesus is representative of the manna and he is the bread of life. And that also, that manna is a representation and a warning to God's people when we are heading into the promised land, that we are not to be grumbling about God changing our diet. And we're told that the manna also represents that we are not to live by bread alone, but by every word that proceeds out of the mouth of God. And that this is our instruction then to tame our taste buds. So God has a huge blessing waiting for his people by showing us the Ark of the Covenant and the products that are in the Ark of the Covenant. That's the health message right there. And here we are, another representative heading on into the promised land, the real promised land. And we are looking at this message of conviction as well. This is also something interesting that I think many people of our people miss, and that is the 6th commandment, that thou shalt not kill. We will be accounted guilty of breaking this commandment if we hate our brother, and if we literally kill somebody, or we kill ourselves in a moment, or whether it's one fork at a time. Most people don't look at it like this, but these are some quotes. Many suffer themselves to be enchained by sensual passions, and will sacrifice physical strength, intellect, and moral powers to the gratification of lust. They will bring themselves to untimely graves, and in the judgment will be charged with self-murder. So whether this self-murder is by a gunshot, or by a noose, or by one fork at a time, and it happens slowly, we will be charged with breaking the 6th commandment. To shorten life by self-murder is a breach of the 6th commandment of God's law. He has not granted us permission to commit suicide gradually any more than he has given us a permit to commit suicide suddenly. Effort should be made to preserve carefully the remaining strength of the vital forces by lifting off every overtasking burden. The stomach may never fully recover health, but a proper course of diet will save further debility, and many persons will recover more or less unless they have gone very far in gluttonous self-murder. I think this is a part of the message that most of us miss, and until I really started studying it, and I really didn't start studying this message of self-murder or suicide until I went to a a funeral of an Adventist brother, and the pastor said, well, because Samson committed suicide, therefore this brother will be, and we know that Samson will be in heaven, and this brother will be in heaven. And I thought, oh, okay, that's interesting. But if we actually look at what happened to Samson, that's a totally different story. That really is not suicide, and there's no time to talk about that today. And that will be one of my future talks about suicide, because that is coming all across America and Canada with the MAID program. And so I have much more to say on that at another time. So these are things to think about. And then John the Baptist, he came not eating and drinking. His diet was a rebuke to the extravagant diets of the day. It's the same as today. So God's people are, and those who are abiding by the health reform message, are a rebuke today to the extravagant diets of the day. And they're not extreme. God did not consider Daniel's diet extreme, John the Baptist's diet extreme, or Nebuchadnezzar's diet extreme. If we look at extreme by letting the Bible define itself, we see that it is actually a diet that is deficient in quantity and quality. And there's a really great chapter in extremes. It's called in Councils on Diet and Foods, called Extremes in Diet. And so you can read more about that. And it's a really great topic where we can really start to understand what extreme means. So we know that John the Baptist, he also had a diet message, and all he had to do was pass the test, and we know he did. We know Jesus, all he had to do was pass the test, and we know he did. It was the severest diet of all, or the severest test of all. That was 40 days of a complete fast, but he overcame through his Father, and we know that we can overcome appetite through Jesus. So God had this huge blessing waiting for John the Baptist. And if you can imagine that if John the Baptist would have gone through another test, or had he not passed the diet test, he would have never been able to have given that honor of baptizing Jesus. What an honor to baptize Jesus. No wonder he rebelled at that in the beginning. It was that was just an amazing event that he was given. He was qualified because of his diet. God qualified him to baptize the King of all kings. And he ate very simple. Had he just eaten whatever he wanted, then he would have never been given that great honor. And Jesus too, had he not passed the diet test, everything would have been lost. Literally everything would have been lost. And we had not only this earth to lose, but all of the unknown worlds out there. Jesus, we had everything to lose by Jesus not passing that test, but we know that he did. He came in the likeness of sinful flesh, and he overcame appetite through his Father. He now overcame appetite. We now overcome appetite through the faith of Jesus. It's not our faith, or it's not pulling ourselves up by our bootstraps, but we cling to Jesus in order for him to do that in us. It's humanity and divinity working hand in hand, and it's working in partnership. We do our part, and which is our test of the will, and we purpose in our mind, and then God does the rest by giving us the strength that we need in order to overcome. I love how this works hand in hand, humanity and divinity. It's our job to change our will and to make our own choice, and then he gives us the strength to change. And especially when we are too weak-willed to do it on our own, Jesus is always willing to help us to overcome. Our job is simply to understand and realize who we are in Christ and who we are without him. So we are given the last great effort. This is the last great effort. This is one of the messages that God has given to the church of Laodicea, because we know in the seven churches, those are different time frames that throughout history, and we know that we are living in the time of Laodicea. That's a whole nother Bible study as well. And but the principles of health reform are found in the Word of God, with the ministry of the word. It is the Lord's design that the restoring influence of health reform shall be part of the last great effort to proclaim the gospel message. We are to shake up this message, not in irritation, but in helping people to think through these issues, that our diet actually does matter, and that there is a salvational message to it. And our physicians are to be God's workers. They are to be men whose powers have been sanctified and transformed by the grace of Christ. Their influence is to be knit up with the truth that is to be given to the world. In perfect and complete unity with the gospel ministry, the work of health reform will reveal its God-given power. Under the influence of the gospel, great reforms will be made by medical missionary work. This is an amazing quote for us. We see that our physicians are called to a very high calling, and that they have a work to do, that God is looking for people, men and women, who will not be bought and sold through our Western medical system, through drugging and through burning and through cutting. Yes, I do thank God for our Western medical system at times. I do believe that there is a benefit to our Western medical system, especially for people who don't understand the health message yet. And it gives people time to actually learn about the health message. And this is the health message and the gospel ministry work is to go hand in hand together, not one without the other. And it will work health reform with its God-given power. If we are just doing teaching health ministry only in the form of physical benefits, we are now doing a human teaching, and we can only expect then to get human efforts out of it. But if we want supernatural benefits to come out of this movement, then it has to be hand in hand, humanity with divinity working together. Again and again, I have been shown that God is trying to lead us back step by step to his original design, that man should subsist upon the natural products of the earth. Among those who are waiting for the coming of the Lord, meat eating will eventually be done away with. Flesh will cease to form a part of their diet. We should ever keep this end in view and endeavor to work steadily towards it. Remember, the health message is progressive. It's not an all or a none. I cannot think that in the practice of flesh eating, we are in harmony with the light which God has been pleased to give us. This is an amazing message that God has given his people. We as the Church of Laodicea have been blessed with so much knowledge, but yet we are condemned really with being a lazy church, that we know more than what we actually do. We've become a church that used to be known for people of the word, but now we're not so much known as that. And even the health message, there's some wonderful documentaries out there about the Adventists. But I just think how much better they could be if all of God's people were more on board with this message. And I've got great hope. This is a message that I've been wanting to share, and I've been learning about for 12 years. And but God's people have not been ready for it. At least the circles of people and influence that I've had, I could recognize that people weren't ready for it. But since the last couple of years, it's been so exciting to see God's people being ready for this message that it is just such a huge blessing. I, for myself, to me, the health message is so self-evident. It is just such a huge, huge blessing to me in my personal life. I have had multiple symptoms over the years, and I take it to God and I say, Lord, why do I have this? And then I name the symptom, whatever it was at the time. I'm dealing with this. What is wrong with me? Why do I have this symptom? Is there a way that I can remedy this? Because I don't want to be living with this for the rest of my life. And in and I know that there's still more for God to teach me, because in every single incident, God has taught me to reverse all of my conditions with the exception of one, which still leads me to know and believe that God has more for me to learn. And I'm good with that if I still maintain that symptom. But it has been such a blessing to me. When I was 19 years old, I had constant headaches. I'd been in and out of the hospital and the emergency room. The doctor finally wanted to put me on drugs every single day for the rest of my life at 19 years old for these constant headaches. I I had the sense, thankfully, not to take that drug for the every day for the rest of my life, because I didn't want those side effects, and I just thought, this is crazy. I'll deal with my headaches rather than deal with these drugs every day for the rest of my life at 19 years old. And I later, a couple years later, found out it was because of chocolate. And there's just major amounts of impurities that are allowed in chocolate. And I found out that many people have sensitivities to chocolate because of that. And but I want you to know that I grew up on a meat and dairy and diet, lots of cheese. I've been addicted to chocolate, to cheese, to Burger King burgers. I've been addicted to so many different things, and so God has really been training me and teaching me about my diet. And just as I have another symptom, there's something more God has for me to change, and I actually embrace it. I embrace it every single time that God wants anything is going on. Um, I at one time was so extremely fatigued on two different occasions, couple years apart, and God showed me again. He showed me when one of those times when I just had extreme fatigue, my legs just felt like I was walking through cement, and I found out it was through the microwaving all my food, and that was many years ago. I found out another time when I was getting so many kidney diseases that all I had to do was drink more water. My cholesterol was high at one point when I was trying to get into the army, and all I was told was to eat a little bit less meat, and my cholesterol went down. Um, and then I also had low iron, and I was told just take an iron pill. So I mean, there was so many things. And also I used to have motion sickness, really bad motion sickness. I'd throw up in the airplane, and it was just terrible. I'd get really sick in cars, and if I wasn't the driver, it was just really bad. And God showed me how to get rid of that. I had carpal tunnel syndrome. I had seasonal allergies. I can't even think of some of them right now. But God has always been faithful to answer. And to me, the health message is just so self-evident that I am just so extremely grateful for this message that I will give up whatever I have to give up in order to follow his health message. I cannot, no one can ever eat our way to heaven. We cannot eat our way to heaven. We cannot keep the Sabbath good enough for heaven. We see with the Sadducees and the Pharisees that they could not keep the law good enough because they excluded their faith. We must have faith when it comes to our diet. Our motive to change our diet cannot be for health, and it cannot be for longevity. The motive for changing our diet must be Christ, that we are the living temple. And we're going to talk more about that next month. And right now, I would be glad to entertain any questions. I will stop sharing.
Thank you so much, dear Janie. Powerful message. Yeah, I can see that Wayne and Linda have something to comment, question. Please.
Okay.
Yes. Can you hear me?
Yes,
Yeah.
I can. Thank you.
Okay. Greetings, Dr. Janie. Thank you for sharing. I also cut my Adventist teeth on Councils on Diet and Foods, and I've been an Adventist now for over 50 years. And um, my husband and I are traditional naturopaths, and because of that, we use a lot of herbs. And I've been reading Councils on Diet and Foods again. I have the CD-ROM, and I was just reading yesterday. Let's see. We need a plain diet free from spices and flesh meats, and grease of all kinds would prove a blessing to you, and so on and so on. Okay. A spice is the woody part, bark, stems, flowers, and seeds of a plant. Otherwise, it's known as an herb. And many spices are very medicinal. And of course, I don't use them in eating. I use them as medicine if I should need that. So I would like to know where you get your information, or if you have information about that we should, what is she speaking of when she says free from spices? You know, I mean, there are stimulating spices. There are spices that are very soothing, that have demulcent properties, and they're very medicinal. And I know that there are a lot of Adventists that they won't touch cayenne, but cayenne is very medicinal. And it's when it's heated and cooked that it becomes an irritant. Otherwise, it is not. If you use just the cayenne powder, it is not an irritant from a naturopathic perspective. So this is where glitch is for me. And also, she talks about not using stimulating things, and yet her favorite beverage was red clover, which is a stimulant. That's one of its properties. So I'm having a little trouble reconciling all this.
Yes. So I take a very simple approach, and it's now I am a researcher. I've read thousands and thousands of research articles. I'm well aware of the research, but I also realize that many of our people have turned research into our God, and we take research over the Bible and spirit of prophecy. So what I've done is I've done a simple search on through Councils on Diet and Foods and all of the Spirit of Prophecy writings, and also I've looked through cookbooks that Adventists before us have written, you know, like the Weimar cookbook, Agatha Thrash, and then 10 Talents, and you know some of these great voices out there. So I've done my own search, and I take what the Bible and Spirit of Prophecy says before anything that research says. So, for example, and I know that there's plenty of people out there who think that cayenne is okay, and some who say it's not okay. I take the position that it's not okay, but I also want to say that I do believe that the spirit of prophecy does allow for medicinal properties to be used. For example, I believe it was either coffee or tea. I can't remember which one. That she said that I think it was coffee that she used as a treatment. She also used ginger as a treatment, a natural remedy. So I do believe that there is room for things that should not be eaten on a daily basis, but they're totally fine as a natural remedy. And so I have no issues on it. That's my own choice. You know, I lead another group and a couple other groups on Zoom classes. I'd like to read something to you. I actually just
Yes.
read this to them this morning. It's in Councils on Diet and Foods, page 351, and it's number 588. It says, we must remember that there are a great many different minds in the world, and we cannot expect everyone to see exactly as we do in regard to all questions of diet. So I take that that it's we are not to ever allow our diet or our differences to divide us. And so I never make diet an issue between me and somebody else. Never. My family, none of them eat like me, and they make fun of me like you wouldn't believe. And that tells me that they love me, that they accept me, that they know that I'm not judging them. They'll eat their unclean meats and just their toasted cheese sandwiches and just in front of me, and I just laugh and they're like, oh Janie, don't you just want a bite? Don't you just wish you could just have a bite? I'm like, I could have a bite if I want to. I choose not to. See, that's powerful. So anyway, I don't take issues with anyone who thinks different than me. It's just, I don't think it's God's way. So I let people have their own convictions, and I have my convictions. So yeah, I think there's nothing wrong with natural remedies that are not in line with our counsel for food.
Thank you. I appreciate that, because that's the stand I take too. I don't eat cayenne. I've never been able to handle hot things. Even as a child, I couldn't eat onions. And so I can use it medicinally, and I have, and it's really helped at times when I've had something like I was using GMO food without realizing that was what was causing the problem and the effects that it was having on my GI tract. And one of the ways that I dealt with it was to use golden seal, cayenne, and lobelia. And it took about 2 months of daily taking capsules of that it resolved the problem, but it did. And so then I, during that time, was able to learn about GMO food and stop using it, as much as I know that I'm using it, just buying organic things and everything. So anyway, I appreciate your perspective. Thank you.
Yes, and also I'm sure that you're familiar with the Scoville heat score. So are you familiar with that? So
Sounds familiar, but tell me.
So the Scoville heat score, let me see if I have it up still. This is I'm gonna pull it up for you.
Okay.
Hope I can get it. Here we go. Okay, here we go. So let me go back and share my screen here for a minute now that I know how to go back and forth. I'm so sorry about that. Okay, screen share. Okay, so this is what's called the Scoville heat scale for chili peppers. Now, black pepper is not a chili pepper, but black pepper can be placed on this heat scale. So we see that bell peppers are way down here at a 0 on the heat scale. And we see that pepperoncini is between 100 and 500. Now, all of these have a range because it depends on the soil condition. It depends on the amount of water. It depends upon the outside temperature. So there's a range of heatness of this heat score. So to me, my way of thinking, and if someone wants to take, a different approach, it's totally fine. I'm just kind of giving my approach. But see, we already know that our counsel is to give up black pepper. Black pepper is not on the heat scale because it's not a true pepper. It's a peppercorn. It's a little berry. But if it were on the scale number would be between 50 and 100. You see, it would be just above bell pepper right here. And then we've got cayenne, which is way up here. My way of thinking is all of these are raw. And so it doesn't matter if it's raw or cooked. I don't care what the research says. But God, I believe that our council says that cayenne and all of these peppers should not be part of our diet, simply because it just makes sense. It's above black pepper. And black pepper in our council is very clear that we are to give up black pepper. So if it is too hot for our delicate stomach, imagine what these others do. And I know what the research says about cayenne. I also know what the research says about coffee. So I just can't take research above the Bible and Spirit of Prophecy. So that's my foundation. And if someone else wants to take a different approach, I'm good with that. But that's just kind of that's my reasoning, and I'm going to stick with it.
Well, we do the same. My husband and I, if Spirit of Prophecy says something, we also will defer to that rather than the research, because we know that research is part of the scientific community, which does not always tell the truth. And so it's very hard to discern a lot of times. And because there are so many voices out there that say so many different things, that we will go with Spirit of Prophecy.
Yes. Yes, exactly. And the sad thing is that so many of our own people don't even know what our own counsel is. And therefore, then they take the counsel of all the worldly people, and as much good as they are doing, it's still not our counsel. It's not the full truth. It's only partial truth. And so when our own people don't even know what our own research, what our own readings say, they're very prone to go wayward. And that's why in my classes, I basically have been giving nonstop Zoom classes since July, and maybe even June. But anyway, almost nonstop. And I do not bring in research. And I am a researcher, and I know what the research says. I've read thousands, if not tens of thousands of research. I did my own research. I've been part of research, a research team. I believe in research, but our people have idolized research so much to the point where they take research over the Bible and Spirit of Prophecy. And so
Right.
these nonstop Zoom classes that I've been giving, it has no research, and it's all Bible and Spirit of Prophecy. And it's
Amen.
just been such an eye opener to people. I see
Awesome.
that. Thank you for your comments and your input, and good for what you guys are doing. Glad to hear what you're doing. And then Daniel, no eat of the unclean food of the Nebuchadnezzar, and Jesus eat fish and lamb, and that did his disciples too. Did they sin? I think what you're asking here is no, they did not sin, because see, the change happened in 1844, and when we started living in the antitypical Day of Atonement. And then it really didn't even start until 1863, because in 1863 was the first year that God actually gave the comprehensive health message to Ellen White and to our people. Of course, in the 1840s and 50s, God, the very first health message prior to 1863 was that God's people was to give up coffee, tea, and tobacco. Not even unclean meat, not even alcohol. It was those three things. And so was there sin in eating meat back then? No. And did Daniel, well, Daniel didn't eat any meat. He never ate meat. Spirit of Prophecy says that he never tasted meat in his life, and neither did his friends. And then Nebuchadnezzar, well, of course, we know that he maintained his diet, because if he would have gone off of his diet after salvation, the Bible would have said so. So we know that he didn't. He probably kept on his own diet, or a form of Daniel's diet, but we know he didn't go back again. So the problem with meat. So if Jesus were to come today, he would not go against his own counsel. And his counsel is in this book. I love this book. yes, it's a compilation. Some people don't like compilations. Well, fine. Find another better book that has all of this wonderful information in one place. It's not in one place. It's scattered all throughout. So that's why I love the book. Read some of the other health books that are not compilations, and you're going to get a huge blessing just the same. But I love Counsels on Diet Foods because it's like all packed right there. So we know that Jesus he's the author of these books and Counsels on Diet and Foods and all of these words. No, I believe that these words are just as inspired as these words. It's the same. I don't believe there's a difference. And so I just lay it out where I think my foundation is. I get such a huge blessing out of reading her words, but they're God's words who uses her, just like Paul's words, are the same. They're not his words, they're God's words. They're moved along by the Holy Spirit. And so Jesus would not come eating meat today if he were born today. Since 1863, which is when the comprehensive diet reform came to be known, since 1863, which was more about body cleanliness and getting off the meat products. And from that moment on, he would have obeyed his own writing because he's the one writing it. And so he's not going to come eating meat today if he were to come today. Today he would be a whole food, plant-based health reformer. He would not be eating vinegar. He would not be eating any of that stuff. So lamb and fish prepared as was custom by the Jews as the time of the disciple were clean. The food at Nebuchadnezzar's table were not. So today we are I know a lot of Adventists think that they are eating health reform when they are eating clean meat and their dairy and their eggs come from the grocery store. I would like to see where in the council that says it's okay. I don't find it. And I've read every word in Counsels on Diet and Foods, and as well as the other health books. It's not there. Instead, what we read is make sure that the cow is healthy, and the cow, and the eggs come from a healthy chicken. And we cannot confirm where cheese and eggs and milk and meat come from a grocery store. And the meat has to be kosher and all the blood and fat be removed. That's both in the Old and New Testament. But as of today, Jesus would not be eating meat. So there is a difference. I mean, he came eating meat because there's no indication where he ate the Passover lamb. He was the Passover lamb, so he didn't have to eat the Passover lamb. It says they broke bread and drank wine. Nowhere does it say that they ate the flesh of a lamb. Why would Jesus eat the flesh of a lamb when he was the lamb? So yes, he did eat fish on a couple of occasions. We know that he provided 4,000 and 5,000. He fed 4,000 and 5,000 people at 2 different times with bread and fish. And we also know then that he ate fish for breakfast one morning, that he was cooking a fire for his disciples. But that was appropriate back then. But John the Baptist was the parallel to coming not eating and drinking. Jesus came eating and drinking. John the Baptist came not eating and drinking in order to show the hypocrisy of the Pharisees and the Sadducees. So it wouldn't have mattered whether John came eating and drinking and Jesus came not eating and drinking. It would have made no difference. They would have bashed on John just like they did on Jesus. So that was done on purpose by God's ordained way.
Yeah, thank you. Wayne, I can see your hand up, please.
Yes. Janie, I'm also a medical massage therapist, and as well as a traditional naturopath. And when I'm working with clients, I use that opportunity to bring in the health message for diet, especially if people are overweight or they're suffering from one disease or another. And one of the texts that I bring up to them, if they're Christians, is Leviticus 11. And some of these evangelical types that I've spoken with say, well, you know, Jesus did away with Moses' law at the cross, and they consider the Leviticus health laws Moses' law. So, what in your estimation would you say in that respect?
Well, what made unclean meat clean at the cross? What did Jesus do at the cross that all of a sudden made pigs clean?
I
So
agree with you. He didn't make it clean, but they're saying they that he did away with the law, just like he did away with the ceremonial laws, and
So one
they
of the
may
things that you can show is that the Ten Commandments are all in the New Testament, and they're just listed a little bit differently. That if you hate your brother, you've committed murder.
right.
So every principle is of the Ten Commandments are still in there, and ask them which of them can they break. Can they break, lying or stealing or adultery or, murder? What still is okay in today? What's considered okay? So I mean, I would say come back with things that make them think. I
I
always
agree.
take upon myself that it's not my job to convict. So all I do is share and I give people things to think about and I just make it very nonchalant. I make it very gentle, very light. And so they think about it.
I like that. One other brief comment, and that is when you look at our, Review and Herald, if they still print that, or um, my journey, or Journey, and all these, like Pacific Union Recorder and various church papers, and you see all these fat cats bulging out of their shirts, and the ladies, have to have a moo on in order to um, cover up their roles. I think it's a sad commentary for Adventism in general. Um, it's kind of hard not to find fault when they're supposed to be health reformers themselves, but they look like they're ready for a heart attack any second.
Yeah, all we can do is pray for our people in leadership positions, which I do, and hold them up and just pray that that they'll learn about the health message. We do have some of our great evangelists that do come out publicly and say that the health message is not salvational, but I would beg to differ that it's like my question is not my question I started out with, is diet a salvational issue? And is it a salvational issue for today? Diet has always been a test for God's people, and it always will be until the end of time. The world started out with sin from diet, and God has continually tried to advance his people back to the original diet, and he's still doing it today. But the real question comes around is, do we really want it to be a salvational issue? And the answer is most of the time, no, we don't want it to be a salvational issue. And it makes my job and those of us who teach health reform much harder when we have our great voices out there saying on public and worldwide TV that diet is not a salvational issue and that it's okay to still eat clean meats. You know, today it's not okay to eat clean meats, but again, it's the same as the Sabbath issue, that if we don't know today about the Sabbath, then we aren't judged by what we don't know. If we don't know about the diet reformation, then we're not judged by it. And somebody has a comment that they have very clean lambs in Norway. Read further in our council, because our council says that there will be a day that our diet is progressive, and there will be a day when God's people there will be no safety in not only eating them, but even owning animals that we would normally eat. We are well beyond that. We are probably at least 30 years beyond when God's people should have given up meat and all flesh foods. So there are no clean lambs anymore. It doesn't matter even if you live way out in the Timbuktu of Africa, because we are told that as the sins of man continue, so will the disease of animals, and they will be in comparison. And we know that people over in Africa are just as sinful as people here. And if we're just as sinful, that means our animals are just as filthy. And there's no safety in even owning them, she says. And you can read that in Councils on Diet and Foods. So John says, one key reason that Ellen White discouraged a diet heavy in meat is that animals have become more unhealthy through the centuries. She was concerned about diseases in animals and the way they would affect humans. In 1905, she wrote, cancers, tumors, and all inflammatory diseases are largely caused by meat eating. Yes, so absolutely. And we are told that at the end time, that those who are continuing to eat meat will walk with God's people no more. And so we can look at that parallel between the Israelites heading into the promised land and us heading into the promised land. And when they grumbled for meat, many of them left, and many of the Egyptians actually went back home again because of diet. And we know that many of our own people are going to lose their way because of diet. We can look at the flood. We can look at Adam and Eve. I mean, we can look at all those examples that I gave, and especially the flood and the Exodus, and see that both of those world events basically changed the world. And we are about ready, the world is about ready to be changed permanently, not just temporarily this time. So there's no safety in eating any animal products anymore. And she says that God will open up a way and provide the timing as well as the research as to when this would happen. And that has happened, in my opinion, 30 years ago, that God's people should have gone to a whole foods, plant-based diet, no animal products at all. There's no cleanliness in any animal products, including eggs, any clean meats, any dairy products at all.
Agreed.
That's, go ahead, Wayne.
I just said agreed. Just a story about 1977. I met a fellow from Tennessee. He lived at Collegedale, and he knew, I forget his first name, McKee, who owned McKee Bakery, Little Debbie's. And my friend Lee he says, I forget what he said to McKee. He says, "What are you doing putting lard in the baked goods that, the Little Debbie's that you produce?" He says, it's refined down so far you don't even know it's lard anymore. And,
Interesting.
and my friend says, "Oh, come on now, you got to change that, you know." So
Yeah.
but you know, I look at Little Debbie's today; they're still produced, and you look at the ingredients, and it reads like a novel.
Yeah.
You know, there's no simple ingredients. And I went to SMC for a short time. I was the night supervisor for the janitorial department, and I talked with this one of the workers there. He was a student, and he would go out into the community and want to try to get Bible studies going. And he said he was really bummed out one day, and he says, I said, "What's wrong?" He said, "I went to this door and this woman just railed on me. He said, she says, you Adventists are such hypocrites because you talk about you having a health message and then you produce this little Debbie stuff." She says, "How can you do such a thing?" And he says, "I didn't have an answer because, you know, it's true what she said." And so, you know, McKee, um, you know, he's a multi-billionaire probably by now, but such a poor witness for those of us who are trying to uphold the health message and live it and teach it. And, you know, we have a job set before us that's a challenge, but you know what? If we're true Adventists, we're up for the challenge
That's right.
because we have to have the answers and we have to live it. We have to live it. Just like
That's right.
the Sabbath or the state of the dead or any of the other um, issues that we have within our church today. If we live it, we can sell it. If you want to say sell it.
Yes. Yes. Thank you for sharing that. Yes. And yeah, I have a story too about an Adventist couple that I had met a while ago, and they were dairy farmers, and yet and I knew what was in dairy, you know, like blood and pus, and I
Right.
said, you know, so how can you drink your own milk? And they answer back, oh, we don't drink our own milk. You wouldn't catch us dead drinking our own milk. And I said, "You're Adventist. You don't even drink your own milk. You won't be caught dead drinking it, but yet you sell it to the unwittingly public? That doesn't make sense to me. That sounds like a hypocrite to me." And well, it didn't take many weeks for God to convict them, and they sold their farm a couple weeks later, had it up for sale. And but yeah, you know, the only thing that we can say is that we know that our church looks like it's going to about to fall. It looks like it's going to break. And what I believe is going to happen, all of the people that are in our movement that don't care about the health message and don't care about, you know, these sacred truths that we hold so dear, they will be shaken out. I believe the shaking is already happening right now. And and our and the diet reform will become front and center. Our potlucks will become healthier, and people will start to make changes. And we just need to keep the course. We need to make sure that what we bring to potlucks and what we put on our plate in potluck is complete health reform, because we are told that we do the greatest medical missionary work at the table. And at the table doesn't mean that we're telling people what they should or shouldn't be on their plates. At the
Yeah.
table means pleasant conversation. It means I eat what I eat, you eat what you eat, um, and but they are going to notice what's on our plate. We just make
Now,
pleasant conversation, and we don't make any big deal about what they're eating on their plate, because it's none of my business. It's none of anyone else's business what's on anybody else's plate. You know,
Yeah.
we have to stop the finger pointing and the
Camille,
gossiping, making ourselves as
işte
if
var
we
ha.
Can you
um,
Ha, خلاص.
Let's see. I just have to mute him. Hey, where
Yeah,
are you?
I just muted him.
Yeah.
So you know, we just have to stay the course. I do believe that those will be shaken out that don't care about the health message, because that's basically what my talk was about. There is a salvational message. We don't want it to be a salvational message, but it is. And many of those, because we're told that many will leave, but many more will come back and take their place. And I believe that the vegans out there, the Whole Foods people out there, we need to be befriending them, because I believe they're coming. And we need to really clean up our potlucks and as well as our own diet, because you know we do have some very famous people, well-known people out there who are health advocates, non-Adventists. They're very interested in our message because of our health message. They come to our church, see our potluck, and they never come back again. Never. And then they blast our name all over, you know, their popular websites and say how hypocritical we are. But we just need to love them. We need to continue to have patience and know that God knows what he's doing. And that, you know, that I do believe that many of them are going to take the place of those who don't care, because their minds are already going to be clear. And all
Right.
the you know, the muck and junk that's in their bodies and in their brains and the way that they think is going to it's actually going to reach them because they have clear thinking paths.
Amen.
And then many of our own people who still want to not tame their taste buds, they are going to walk with God's people no more. This is a very, very serious issue. The health message is a very serious issue. And people may call me as an extremist, but that's not in God's definition. I go right back to Nebuchadnezzar, Daniel, and the Garden of Eden. None of those three diets were extreme. You know, what's extreme is when we become sick and we're not following the true message. And now we become sick and we're dying for a want of food. So,
So, if you are on potluck, you know, don't you think, you know, when you go to potluck, it's so many different things you mix so much food, and that's not good either. I think it's a problem. And today, when they have started to put insects even in the food, you don't want to go to potluck actually, because you don't know what kind of flour people are using and all those things.
Right.
yeah, most of what I take, well, I mean, everything that I take are just whole foods. So they may have a quinoa salad with some garbanzos in it, and they have carrots and celery, or it's just a plain beans with, you know, some seasonings. I take only whole foods. I don't eat anything with flour. So I don't eat anything processed in a potlucks or even at home. I just don't eat any of that, because I think that our health reform diet is calling for whole foods. It's a whole food plant-based diet, and the definition is right in the word of it.
Yes.
Whole food plant-based, nothing processed, and that's fruits and vegetables, whole grains, beans, legumes, nuts, seeds. Terj, did you have a comment or a question?
I just had a comment, and for some times ago at work, we have a canteen where we get to where all the employees go having a lunch, and then there was someone who commented about me not having eating the meat they selected, and then it actually became a very good conversation where they asked what Adventist what was special about Adventism. So that ended up in very good conversation, and then one of my colleagues said that he had heard about the blue zones in Los Angeles, where people were living much very long. So
Yes, praise God. I love when people ask those kind of questions. What's special about you? oh, they just, open a floodgate. It's like, where do I start? There's so many things to say about why we're different. Now, the mainstream Adventism, I think, wants to make us the same as everybody else. But I can't help that. I mean, all I can do is I'm responsible for me and my answer and the people that I can affect. So I can't help what everybody else does. All I can do is share the truth.
So, Janie,
Amen.
don't you think that the health message is so important? When Sister Wise says that when we have victory over appetite, we can have victory over all other sins.
Yes, absolutely. And I believe that because I mean, I've been teaching this class, nonstop since July. And I can see it in my own life as well as many other people that I've been teaching over the past few decades. I mean, I've taught people all over the world, thousands of people. And when they can give up appetite and, and I'm still in a fast, I've started a fasting group on WhatsApp. So if anybody is interested in my fasting group on WhatsApp, we're just a small group of people that are interested in overcoming our dietary sins, our perverted taste buds, as well as our character foibles. So if you are interested in that, joining my group on WhatsApp, give me an email or text me. My phone number is 604-556-1622. 604-556-1622. And we fast every Wednesday, and it can be, fast as you see fit. It can be water fast, it can be juice fast, it can be fruit fast, because not everybody is up for a water fast. It scares them. They're brand new. They have so much to overcome that to ask for a complete day without food is just like impossible for them. So this is a very forgiving group, and a very lovely group. We're very tolerant of everybody's place wherever they are in the message. And but reach out to me, find me on WhatsApp, or send me a text message, and I'll get you into our group. But we fast every Wednesday. And in this group, like I said, we had two marriages saved, two Adventists actually born again for the first time. And then, of course, people overcoming all sorts of appetite and character foibles. It's just an amazing group. So it's just a small group of us who've gotten together. I don't know, it might be 50 or something. And we all fast. Some people even just fast from media because that's a major problem for them. And then there's other people, I don't know what they fast from, but and I don't ask. Because some people are dealing with some pretty heavy things like pornography, and if that's what they need to fast from, then you know what? Let's help each other on our way to heaven, and let's help
Amen.
purify ourselves, and let's not finger point at people and make it harder to make it to heaven. Instead, let's make it easier for people to get to heaven. Let's support each other in our sins. I mean, not in our. I don't mean that in our sins. I mean support each other. While we're trying to overcome our sins, like let's root for each other.
Right. Oh, I just have to come back to, since you started up with these spices. So they say that you should use a little bit of pepper when you use turmeric. What are you using instead of pepper?
Yeah, the reason that you need pepper is because they want the fat. So just take one almond or take one nut with it.
Okay.
That's all you need. It takes the place of black pepper. I never take black pepper.
Okay. And then I thought you said something about ginger. Did you mean that ginger is not good to use in the food?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, so I have a list. If anybody is interested in that list of the irritating seasonings, I have that. So you can just email Eva to get my email. But my email is DR for Dr. DR Janie. There's no period. So Dr. Janie, DR Janie at progressivelyraw.com. DR Janie at progressivelyraw.com. So if you're interested in that list, I'd be glad to send it to you. And then I have a lot of options as well.
I have problems with this technique, but I have a question because I heard that you could boil the turmeric, what do you call it, with the coconut oil instead of pepper and some water. You just boil it because that coconut oil is do the same thing maybe as the pepper, maybe it absorb the turmeric easier with that oil.
No, all we need is any kind of fat. So take
yeah.
one walnut with it. It's the fat in the pepper that is beneficial. So just use a different fat.
Okay.
And but I don't use coconut oil. I know that other people do. I take no issue with that. It's not a whole food, and I believe that God's end time people will not be having any processed foods. Of course, this is a process. This is not an all or a none. At the end of this call, you're not going to be, eating 100%. If you're not there already, don't expect that you're going to be eating this overnight because it's not realistic. So be gentle on yourself and, just grow. So instead of coconut oil, I use coconut manna, and it's a whole food. It's just the whole coconut that has been stirred, creamed, and that's it. Nothing's been extracted. It's still all fully a whole food. And our health message is progressive, so I'm constantly changing too. As I learn more, then I am more than willing to change. So for those of you who asked for the information on the seasonings, you'll notice that there is a couple of recipes on there that have nutritional yeast flakes. I personally don't use nutritional yeast flakes anymore. They can really cause some digestive problems with people. And Wayne, is your wife okay there?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. You
She's
froze
right
there
here.
with your hand on your forehead, and I was like, "Uh-oh, what's going on there?"
Well, I was scratching my eye.
Uh, yeah, your camera froze right there, and I was like, "Oh no, what's happening?" Yeah, so that's my spiel. So I know that I know what the research says about coconut. I know I've read it all, and I know there's some popular voices out there that are pro coconut oil. Totally fine with that. I use it as a remedy. I don't use it as a food. If you want to use it as a food, I'm just telling you my opinion, and I think I have backing for it in council, in our council. So, but that's where I am. If that's not where you are, I'm totally good with that. You go at your speed. You ask the Lord. I'm nobody's conscience. I'm a nobody. I'm just a talking donkey. I'm just the middleman for God. So that's all I want to be.
I want to share an experience. I have a friend, he's a blood microscopist, and he thought it was really, really good to take 2 tablespoons of coconut oil every day. So I don't know for how long he did, but he ended up with a heart attack.
What else was he eating? That was the question I was having. Because, I have a book by Dr. Fife. It's called The Coconut Oil Miracle. And like I told you the other day, we don't do tablespoons of coconut oil, but sometimes I put a little on my yums or a potato or something like that. And I was thinking, I wondered, see, because all processed oils attack the thyroid. There isn't any processed oil that does not attack the thyroid. So I'm wondering, what else was he having in his diet? It to me, it would seem unlikely, just my opinion, that the coconut oil alone would have caused a heart attack.
Well, he mostly have green drinks here, so he's very, very healthy.
I mean, what did he put in his green drink? Did he put protein powder or anything like that in there?
No, you know, I didn't really like his green drink. It was lots of spinach, but then he had raw onion in it there, and he had, you know, I don't remember, but it was very, very healthy.
Well, spinach is high in oxalic acid. So, and if he was using a lot of spinach, a high amount of oxalic acid isn't good because it binds up calcium and it does other things too. So that's what I'm saying. I would have a hard time just pointing at the coconut oil and saying that was the culprit. I'm not trying to discredit him or discount what you're saying, but I would want to know everything he ate before I made that, decision that it was the coconut oil. And even then I couldn't, because he could have some comorbidities, things that were involved in this that really maybe were triggered by something else. We don't know.
And
Yeah.
that's my answer as well. And we just don't know. And but I just recommend all my clients to just stay away from any free fats. We don't see any free fats in the Garden of Eden. And the way that I look at it
Right.
is we are on our way to heaven, so we might as well start to prepare our taste buds for that first great dinner. And if we're still eating, have a perverted diet and taste buds, we're going to grumble, and we're going to say, oh, I don't like this fresh fruit that Jesus has placed for me. Of course, we know that's not going to happen, but I'm just saying, tongue in cheek.
Be there.
Yeah, exactly. Thank you. Yeah, no one would be there anyway, because we see that, with the Israelites, as they were heading towards the promised land, they walked with God no more. And those who continued to grumble and wouldn't change their taste buds, well, most of them ceased to even live anymore. A great plague hit them. All
So,
right.
Janie, wouldn't you say that if some people are seeing this program and they hear what you are saying, but still they feel they really want to continue, but they still want heaven? Don't you think they should pray, Lord, please help me to want to do your will?
Yes.
Somehow to get over that stage, because some people are struggling, with the even if they see it's right, it's best, it's still a struggle.
Yes, it is a struggle. I mean, it was a struggle for Ellen White. It was a struggle for me. It's a struggle for many of God's people. But that's part of God's ordained way of perfecting our character. He brings trials to us, and he expects us to be people of principle, people of the word, that when we are shown something, that we change. And, I gained great strength by reading that the appendix in Counsels on Diet and Foods, where Ellen White talks about her own personal struggles, about getting over meat, about getting over vinegar, not liking bread. And, I mean, she had some struggles too. And, but, this is part of our Christian walk. And if we want heaven, we are some of the strongest people in this world, yet we talk as if we have no strength at all. And the reason that I say we have the most strength of anybody in the entire world is because we have God on our side. And I too, just like everybody else, have had a major perverted taste bud. I grew up with meat and dairy and sugar and chocolate, and I've had my addictions and junk food and fast food and unclean meat. I mean, I used to have liver parties, and just invite a bunch of people over, of my friends who I knew who loved liver, and put it on the grill. I mean, I had terrible taste buds. And it's just a struggle that we all have to go through. And Jesus had to struggle, and we have to struggle. He was not immune from it, and we're not immune from it. He was able to overcome through his Father, and we are now able to overcome through Jesus. I've had to overcome through many of my issues by just praying and praying and praying. And God, please help me to change my taste buds to like the things that you want me to like, and help me to hate the things that you want me to hate. And I mean, I have shared in other testimonies my own dietary struggles, and one of them was cheese. I was so thoroughly addicted to cheese. I had cheese at every single meal and every snack, and if I passed the refrigerator, I'd take more cheese. This is before I was ever a Christian. And when I read that we are not to have cheese, then I quit it. But I struggled terribly for it, and I was truly addicted to it. And this is my journey about cheese. And I had to pray every week when I made my meal plan. I had to pray, God, please help me to find recipes that I will like that doesn't have cheese in it. And then I'd make my recipes. I'd make my grocery list. I'd go to the grocery store. I'd sit in the car before I ever go in. Oh God, please help me to not buy cheese. I am too weak. I need your help. I need your strength. Lord, please help me to even stay away from the cheese department. I can't take it, Lord, but I have to go buy food. But I know there's cheese in there. Please help me. Give me your strength. And I'd go shopping and I'd get to the checkout and I'd be praising God in my mind. I would just be jumping up and down in my mind. Thank you, God, that I have no cheese in my cart. And I get out to my car and I literally hands together, praying, praising God. Thank you, God, that you helped me to overcome not have cheese. And I did this every single week for a year. And then on top of it, I was invited to people's homes that served cheese. I was, of course, going to potlucks every week. And before potlucks, I would have to go into the bathroom stall by myself and I'd pray, Lord, I know there's going to be cheese here. Please help me with my taste buds. I am so weak. I know that I'm going to take cheese. And I don't want to. I don't want cheese. And I know it's bad for me. And please help me to overcome. And I would just go through potluck line and I would say, God, please help me not to even see these delicious dishes that have cheese in them. Just help me to overlook them and help me not to even accidentally even take cheese. And I did this every single Sabbath for a year, every Sabbath without exception. And every single grocery store for a visit for a year without exception. And every time I'd go to someone's home, I'd say, well, I don't know if you want to invite me. So I made fun of myself. Well, I eat kind of weird. I don't eat cheese anymore and dairy or meat, by the way. And well, what do I feed you? So, I kind of learned to work around those issues. Now I have no problem. It's been, decades now. And, I've learned to talk to people and to where it's not offensive and that, it's all upon me. And so, I always have very nice visits with people. And so I did this for a year. And then I told my girlfriend in church, I said, I'm just struggling with cheese. I can't deal with it. It's a terrible, terrible addiction, like coffee and I mean, it was worse than coffee. It was like I later found out it's casomorphine in it, which is like a morphine, and which is what I was addicted to. And so finally, and I told her this terrible, terrible addiction that I had, that it's been a year now. And she said, well, have you ever taken a health reform pledge? I said, no, I've never heard of it, because I'm just like in the Adventist church, for like maybe a year and a half or something. And or maybe not even that, but it's a year and a half, something like that. I mean, I was very, very new, probably a year and a half. And so she brought it for me next Sabbath, and she said, well, I'll bring the health reform pledge to you. And she brought it to me, and it says, I solemnly swear that I will not partake of things that will hurt my body temple. And then it gives a list of a whole bunch of things, tea and coffee and drugs and meat and spices and blah, 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 everything else. And then it got to cheese. And I just dropped to my knees. And I literally dropped to my knees and I just said, God, I promise, I give you my pledge. I will never eat cheese again, even if I have to deal with this addiction for the rest of my life. I will never eat it again. I give you my word. And I hadn't eaten it for that year. I did not touch it through that addiction. And at that moment, in the snap of a finger, when I said, God, I pledge, I will never eat it again. He took it away from me instantly, just as fast as I finished my prayer. It was gone, and I've never had it since. I've never had cheese, and I've never had the addiction. Now, some people may think that's extreme, but see, that's the struggle that we have to get through in order to get to heaven. We have to overcome our perverted appetite, and we have to overcome our character foibles, and our diet issue is important, and it's serious. And if anyone has any questions, I'm more than happy to talk to people, read counsels on diet and foods prayerfully, especially the first 3 sections, and you'll see exactly how clear it is, the diet thing. It's a very, very clear couple of chapters. If we had more time, I'd go through it, but anyway, that is, we just have to struggle. We just have to struggle. That's our lot in life, is to struggle. And God gives us the overcoming ability when we just make up our minds.
Amen. Yeah, it's when I saw cheese should not come into any stomachs, I just stopped, but I have not had any wish for it. So I was not struggling like you were. So anyway, yeah, so thank you so much, Jenny, for taking this time. And thank you everyone for coming. And thank you for, maybe Brother Wayne, would you like to have a closing prayer with us?
Sure. Father in heaven, we come to you this afternoon, evening, whatever it is, where we are. We ask, Lord, that you will help us to take what Janie has said and apply it, and give us, Lord, the strength to overcome the addictions and the habits and the things that we have besetting us, because we do want to go to heaven. And since it is a salvation issue about diet, because it was for Adam and Eve, it was a diet thing. It was a salvation issue. And so we ask, Father, that you will bless Janie, bless her as she continues her researching and her
Industry.
presentation, yes, and yes, her ministry. And I pray that we'll all be able to learn from her and learn from each other, so that we can help others of our faith and not of our faith in overcoming disease. So we thank you, Father, for this time we've had, and we ask for your blessing in Jesus' name.
Amen. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And John asks about coconut manna. And yes, that is fine, John. Coconut manna, also known as coconut butter or creamed coconut, is a pureed coconut product made from fresh coconut meat that's been flaked or ground. Is that okay? Yes. Yep, that's a whole food. You know, and if we can't overcome our own appetite, how can we ever expect any of our family or friends or anyone else? We have to, you know, be that example to, you know, Jesus had to be that example for us. He overcame in sinful human flesh, and we do too. So we, you know, all of us have a testimony. We all have a story. And as we overcome, we can encourage others now to overcome. Because if I can overcome cheese and that severe of addiction for a year, I know you can too.